While it's been widely discussed that UFOs are of an alien nature, we are starting to realize that many of these may also be man made.
The stuff I was working on wasn't classified. The programs that were monitoring were.
Unconventional and unacknowledged activities in science that are not supposed to exist.
It accelerated at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left them in the dust. I mean, boom, 8,000 to 10,000 miles an hour.
They looked like butterflies that were on fire. Well, when I played the footage back, there was a TR-3B sitting there cloaked above that ship the entire time.
Why is it that if these are solid triangular craft, are we able to sometimes see stars through them?
You're going to have a militarization of space, like an arms race in space, and that's going to require a significant classified component. That is a secret space program.
We're dealing with something very close to alien technology, engineered down to the atomic level.
Something really odd is going on out there.
All right, guys, we're here with the whole crew. We got Darcy Weir, the filmmaker and producer.
As a higher intelligence.
Oh, we got Alara, who actually filmed that video that you see that was that they filmed. It looked like butterflies, and then when she played the footage back, they saw that actual that cloaked TR-3B in the footage. So she'll be talking about that experience and how she got that footage. And then we also got the one and only Jim Goodall here with us tonight as well. So it's a full house, ladies and gentlemen. We're hoping maybe Tyler might even stop in and say hi too later. That would be cool. So we'll have. I invited Richard Dolan as well, although he's been quite busy, so we're not sure if he will be stopping by. But without all of us, this film wouldn't have been possible, and I'd like to thank Darcy for putting this film together and bringing me in to become part of it. And we're going to
integral to the story.
We'll dig into some behind the scenes stuff from behind this, and we're just going to have a good discussion here tonight, guys, because there's lots to talk about. Disclosure is at our fingertips. And a lot of these programs are coming out. A lot of interesting information is fighting its way into the limelight, and let's get into it. Where do we even start?
Well, I guess we could start with what do you think's actually happening with disclosure?
Well, disclosure is it is a lot of different things going on with disclosure right now. So there's the mainstream, what is going out there into the mainstream, but I don't see much in terms of scientific disclosure. I don't see a lot of the scientists and the skeptic community being super swayed by the information that's out there, and that's because the information that's out there isn't very well publicized. It's not really well out there. It's not, and we got to. I've been writing a script for another documentary that's based on disclosure from my viewpoint, doing this for 20 years, and just in the scientific stuff, going into DARPA, and getting a hold of the scientists, finding out the names of the scientists, tracking down where the programs went, who was working on what, and then certain things that are classified, that NASA was working on, propulsion technologies. And so we set up this whole APEC conference, about a year ago with Tim Ventura, because I knew he was doing good work on exposing the work NASA was doing with the superconductor anti-gravity with that Podkletnov, the Russian scientist.
Yeah, Dr. Eugene Podkletnov.
Yep. And that's all related to a lot of the theory behind, the engine that Edgar Fouché described in his descriptions of the TR-3B, that magnetic flux field disruptor, as he called it, or that the Mercury centrifuge engine that spun that rotating liquid mercury.
Right, a plasma, a mercury-based plasma reactor, basically, right?
Yeah, and it was doped with I think he said cadmium, lead, and I forget the other element, maybe barium or something. He said there was other things that they mixed in with the mercury to give it more of a whatever effect they were trying to achieve in it. I don't know if it's certainly not a superconductor. Mercury is pretty conductive. It's also magnetic, but he also described that it was super cooled.
Yeah,
And
which if you supercool it and it becomes a solid, do you think then it would become basically like what NASA was testing out?
maybe I don't know enough about the material science of lead. I mean mercury, to really know about how cold it would. It would probably have to get pretty cold to get superconducting. But it could also be that they had electromagnets powering the thing, and that they needed to keep the magnets cool. By supercooling them. Of course, those kind of supercooling and electromagnets are incredibly heavy. That kind of a system, so it's just unfeasible to imagine that this was put on an aircraft unless it had some serious anti-gravity thrust and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's I went down that whole rabbit hole with that information from the physics standpoint. Just going back to scientists taught like the Einstein torsion tensor and Cartan torsion theory is where it started back in the 1920s and 30s, and it turned into this whole thing of the kinematic effect, which is gravitomagnetism. This idea that electromagnetism, if charges move through space-time, they create magnetic fields. So if mass moves through space-time, it should theoretically create a gravitomagnetic field, similar to the way that the laws of electromagnetism work. That gravity should work similar in field theory, and that led to this whole a whole line of research that came out of this two top scientists that I traced a lot of this back to. Man, they figured out a lot of this stuff back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. Right around the time that Einstein died, and the decade after, is when his protege, a guy named John Archibald Wheeler, who actually taught Richard Feynman, he was Feynman's PhD, advisor, and he John Wheeler worked with another guy out of the University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in what some researchers deemed the Invisible College, which was a group of these scientists that had access to a lot of classified information and materials at the time. You go back, Wheeler helped develop the H-bomb, which was some of the most classified stuff after the Manhattan Project that we had going on. So Wheeler did a lot of preliminary research into that, and they wrote a lot of papers related to this kinematic effect. Superconductors and gravitomagnetic drag. Was a paper published by Dewitt in like 66 or 68. And right around the late 60s is when they started publishing on this idea of using rotating superconductors to create these sorts of effects.
The NASA study came out in the late 50s, right? The rotating superconductor. Am I right?
No, the NASA didn't start that until after Podkletnov. So Podkletnov came out, I think, like 91 or 92. With that whole experiment, and that caught the attention of some of the people at NASA Huntsville, who are at the Advanced Concepts Research Lab, who kind of look out for this type of stuff, and when they get wind of things like this, they do some experiments. It also caught some of the guys over at the ESA, the European Space Agency, this guy Giovanni Modenese. So Modenese actually met up with Podkletnov and worked with him for a number of years throughout the 90s, and published one of the best books on that whole Podkletnov effect and this whole the theory and application of all the physics involved with that. Giovanni Modenese. If people out there interested in the science want to read up on this further and get more information, he'd be a good source to go to. One of the popular one everyone talks about is Ning Lee, right? Out of NASA Huntsville. But as I talked to some of the other I talked to all the other NASA scientists from Huntsville, including Tony Robertson, who comes on the APEC conference quite frequently, and He informs me that Ning Li just got a lot of the attention, but she didn't really know as much as people think she did, and she didn't there's this whole rumor that she went to work for the Chinese government and disappeared and all that. But
Yeah.
her obituary states that she died in Huntsville last year or the year before. I forget. I think it was last year.
Mhm.
But she died in Huntsville, Alabama, and lived there, throughout her,
Elderly life.
her late years.
They'd be
So,
missed by the elderly.
I think actually Dr. Eugene Potklinoff will become more famous because literally 1 month after the documentary got released, BBC just released a anti-gravity documentary featuring Eugene Potklinoff, and I posted that on my Facebook. I'm like, holy shit, we're on to something now, aren't we? Like BBC's coming forward and admitting that the British government had a deep interest in this technology and was testing it
Project
out.
Green Glow, yeah, and they
Yeah.
had that guy on. He's been on that lovely chap. What's his name there?
That old chap.
Bob Greenier. No, is it
Yeah.
something like that? He's been on APEC before. No, it's not Bob Greenier. Sorry, that's somebody else. That's the guy. That Bob Greenier is the guy from Martin Fleischmann Project. Sorry. It's similar to that. It's Green. Well, Project Green Glow might be throwing me off, but isn't his last name Green something as well?
Not everything's green in this world.
But I think they named it Green Glow, Project Green Glow, because of the guy's last name. I thought. I have to go back, and it's one of the APEC conferences. I know we did. If I go back to it, but yeah, he's the guy over that worked for British Aerospace BAE and worked on a lot of this stuff. So they basically hired him. They say like, well, you think there's anything to this? You think, and he was one of the people that were hired to go and look into this.
Investigate it. I think just in terms of my question at the starting of this interview is like, how does disclosure fit into, the mainstream being more subjected to the idea that we've been testing out anti-gravitic technology secretly, clandestinely, right? I think that is part of the disclosure project, admitting that we have some of this technology, that we're able to use some of this technology in our skies and possibly in space. So,
how far have we really gotten with it? Because you see all this stuff, and it's like, oh, these people have these theories, and then they try it out, and then you get these officials that come in and say, oh, well, it didn't work, and there's nothing to see here, and this is all silliness and ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Then you find out 5 years later that they didn't drop the research, that it just went underground and got more funding from a secret source and continued. And because you keep up with these scientists, you remember their names, and you check back in with them. You say, hey, it's been 5 years.
Yeah. What was Dan Scheckman doing over at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? Working for the Air Force Materials Command. Right after he did published his study on quasi-crystals.
No, that was right after he had just finished his degree at Technion University, and they sent him over from Israel to go and do his postdoc research at Wright-Patterson. And then he's the guy that discovers quasi-crystals a couple of years, like a decade, like 5 or 10 years later it was. So maybe he was looking at that stuff, and it took him that long to figure it out, But
well, and if you have a military, or if you have access to military funding and materials, you're not beholden to the academic sort of resources, which some of these universities don't have that much money to throw at projects, and they don't have they just don't have the facilities to carry out some of the tests you want to do. Oh, you want to build like a small, prototype in our shitty university lab? We probably can't do that. But then he goes to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he's working there they can do whatever they want, and they can go, what do you need in terms of funding to make this work? And whatever comes out of the accomplishment of your research, we own it. It's just a win-win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a that, and people don't understand. You trace back a lot of this stuff, and they think it's like, oh, it's all going to be done at one secret lab by like this group, like you think of Independence Day where they go into that bunker with that scientist who doesn't get out. They kept them locked down there with the UFOs for like 20 years, and that's how it all works. But in reality, it's like little pieces of these things would be sent out to like random labs under like real
whatever lab specializes in like trying to reverse engineer whatever they're trying to see.
So this is how it works. So this is how it works. There's companies that deal with subject matter experts. So I found one of these guys that had gotten caught out at Wright-Patterson, because I searched for Wright-Patterson classify all these facilities. I search for anything that comes out, like classified stuff, all the news all the time. And one day I was searching, and I got a hit for this guy that was right in Fairborn, outside of Dayton, Ohio, and he got arrested with like 1,000 classified Air Force documents in his house. And it turns out he was a graduate student at Wright State University at the Terahertz and Ultrafast Photonics Research Lab. And I started looking into his published paperwork, and his PhD thesis was on polariton condensates. Which is it's basically like quasi particles inside of materials, which is wave guides and quantum physics inside of materials, and really interesting stuff. But this is the lab that Lou Elizondo wants to send that piece to, that he's talking about with the wave guides that are the nanometers, and it's magnesium and bismuth or whatever, bilayered. This is the lab that
they already have been doing stuff like this. So yeah, exactly.
So him sending it to the Army and then saying, well, we don't know where to go, and we got to find someone competent to send it to, and all this. Well, it's not really the Army. The Army has some labs and stuff, but it's really all right there at Wright State and US. The Wright State would have the facilities for it. But they train a lot of the guys from USAFI, the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology, which is right there, and then also NASIC, which is the National Aerospace Intelligence Center, which are all right in Wright-Patterson, including the head of the Material Command is at Wright-Patterson. So, yeah, all the stuff that everyone thinks it's Area 51 is where all this stuff goes on, but man, Wright-Pat is
Kirkland Air Force Base.
Well, there's a whole bunch of facilities out there, in the desert between, the mountains between Edwards Air Force Base and Area 51.
Yeah, Edwards.
Tonopah, we got China Lake.
Holloman,
yeah.
Holloman has White Sands missile range right next to it, but I've been there multiple times, and they don't have a facility to accomplish anything other than what they were publicly tasked to do. But the spooky stuff at Kirkland, yes, because Sandia Labs is there. Wright-Pat, they have their Alien Technology Center. And that's primarily, when they say alien technology, they're referring to it as Chinese or Russian or whatever, not necessarily, that type of alien technology.
Yeah, well, wasn't Benowitz was this, Paul Benowitz was spying on or looking at, he lived right next
Kirkland.
to Kirtland Air Force.
Kirkland.
Yeah.
And I flew into Albuquerque when I went to Tesla Tech last year. So it's the Albuquerque airport's right next to Kirtland Air Force Base. You can actually right from our jet, I could see all the military planes right there on the runway and stuff. So it's right there. But he lived right across the street from there, and he was filming, something that they were telling him it was aliens, but it was really some top secret project that he was filming, that they were flying these, I think they were some kind of advanced drones or something in and out of. but they were telling them they were UFOs. Doty was, as
Yeah.
part of the U.S. Air Force the Office of
Special Intelligence,
Special Investigation.
Air
OSI.
Force,
OSI,
OSI, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what Walter Bosley was too. He was in that film Mirage Men. And,
Hmm.
It just so happens Space Force is taking over all the same bases.
yeah,
Coincidence.
all the same bases. Yeah, so
Unified under one command. So that
Yep.
way they can have
interesting
one
dynamic.
sort of vision. And I mean, I've even said this on other interviews, like it makes sense that they do that, because if we are really going to be going into space as a like nation publicly, not like clandestinely, secretly, then all of those, all the military organizations need to be read into whatever they're doing up there, and it kind of has to be. Things will always be
Yeah.
stovepiped. Things will always be considered classified, but in terms of reporting and stuff, they need to have it all under one, umbrella. And I think that's why the Space Force is so, prevalent and important. We haven't heard much about it since. I know that you covered it a lot, Alara, right? Like on your show, but like, Trump announced it, and you don't hear much about what they've been doing behind the scenes.
I watch them like a hawk because I know that whatever does come, it's going to come. I watch their movements. Like I've been doing this for a long time. I watched them take over all those bases and stuff like that. So I already kind of knew because of the experiences I had. I already knew how advanced our technology was, and that they just need a way to start to disclose this to the people because they can't hide it forever. And so, naturally, I took an interest when Space Force was created. I was like, here we go. Now we got one banner. They're going to start the process drip, drip, drip. But if I can stay on it and be constantly analyzing it and trying to, like kick down the narrative, like we were talking about earlier, maybe I can contribute in some small way to, the greater good.
So I was gonna say, like, the whole thing that happened with 1947, right? Roswell happened July 7th, 6th or 7th, and then 3 days later, July 10th, is when the U.S. Air Force, the CIA, and the NSA were all created.
Yeah.
So
There's no such thing as a coincidence.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do we start to control this?
And then, so I question whether Space Force is technically, 1947, they realized that, like, hey, we have an air domain. Well, we've kind of had, airplanes since, for the past 2 decades, really. It's time we create another branch of the military just to deal with airplanes and stuff, and things that are in the fly, all things that fly in our aerial. So kind of made sense to create the airport, and I don't think they could have pushed that much paperwork through in 3 days. It takes a lot longer to create anything in government than that, but
It was already planned.
But it was already planned. But it definitely, I think that it helped push it through, because it definitely created a whole nother department file to keep secrets within, and a whole nother, But I don't know whether that's what's going on with Space Force, because I talked to a lot of the guys who are, I talked to some, not a lot of the guys, but I've talked to a couple military people. I get jobs sometimes for military people, and I always just dig right in, dude. I have no shame in my game. I'm just asking them a million questions about that. What do you think about Space Force? This guy, he was like he was a real high officer, or I think a lieutenant or whatever in the Air Force, and he was saying that he thinks everyone thinks it's a joke in there, and that it's just some like bureaucratic junk, and I thought that was hilarious.
I think you don't have to like be too imaginative to put together, like, if this conflict between Russia and Ukraine really takes off and becomes an international conflict, it becomes another flashpoint for World War.
Yeah.
And they've already set up all of these mechanisms to report aerial and space phenomenon, right? under the new, advanced aerial threat sort of research program. Plus, you've got Space Force. It's logical to think we're going to start cataloging this possibly in partially the mainstream media so that we can keep tabs on what we might have considered UFOs before, but are actually, China's or Russia's, our adversaries in this conflict, their super advanced, what are these clowns doing here? And then, then also, hey, this isn't any of our adversaries' stuff. This is probably something else. Whose is this? It's possible.
This is like a weird combination tonight. We got like 200 people watching, man. And if we get Tyler on, this whole room's gonna blow up.
You got many of his trolls already probably.
Oh yeah, this is just like they're all like everyone's already here. It's like, come on, why don't we just like talk about how we come together, man, and like, what?
Yeah.
Ufology, man.
I don't think that's ever gonna work, man.
Nah, people want to talk shit more than
we could all find a way to like because I swear there's forces out there trying to get us all to fight each other, man, and lose sight of the real goal and the real enemy here.
Right.
Very, very possibly, man. It kind of like over a year ago, it started becoming an anti-Lou sort of fight, right? Yeah, let Jim talk.
I gotta ask him some questions too about we gotta get into a whole bunch of stuff about so Jim, why don't you talk about you want to jump in here and talk about some of the stuff that because you knew Ben Rich, right? You knew.
Yeah, Ben, I don't know how I ever managed to get on Ben Rich's to call list. I mean, we spoke quarterly for 25 years. Now I have no influence on Lockheed. I was never employed by Lockheed. I wasn't some bureaucrat who controlled funding. He just enjoyed the fact that I loved the product that came out of the Lockheed Skunk Works. And that's one of the reasons we got a Blackbird in Minneapolis, because he called me in August of '89 and said, hey, the Blackbirds aren't making it through Congress. If anyone can scrounge one, you can. And sure as shooting, I did. But he made a number of statements, both in a public forum and to me directly, that tells me that, we've been there, done that. The first one was right after he retired. I believe it was '93. He was at UCLA giving a talk. He was a keynote speaker at the graduate aeronautical school. And at the end of his talk, he said, we have the ability to take ET home. Now you gotta think about that. We can take ET home, which means we can go across the universe. And I mean, apparently the technologies, we have it. I'm also a friend of Bob Lazar. I knew him before he went to work out in the desert, and he didn't believe in UFOs back then. Sure does now. But just before Ben passed away, we were talking about our mutual friend, John Andrews, who died in the mid-90s.
Testers Model Corp, right?
Pardon?
He's the owner of Testers Model Corp.
No, he was the director of new kit development. And he had his mini skunk works in San Diego on Oberlin Drive. And but he wrote to Ben almost weekly. I talked to him quarterly. And John shared everything that he ever received from Ben, and I do the same to him. But just before Ben Rich died of esophageal cancer, and it was caused by probably breathing the nasty chemicals used in the solvents on low observable coatings, we're talking about a lot of things. And near the end of our conversation, he said, Jim, we have things out in the desert. And he wasn't referring to Area 51. Was he referring to Dugway? Was he referring to S4 or some new base up in the extreme northeast corner of Nevada? I don't know. But he said, Jim, we have things That's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. Now, he wasn't referring a general, what the general public can comprehend, but what I can comprehend. And I got a pretty wild imagination. And he said, Jim, if you've seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. Now, this is from the former president and general manager of the Lockheed Skunk Works. He was Kelly Johnson's right-hand man from the beginning of the Skunk Works back in the 40s when they developed the XP-80. The other thing is that Kelly Johnson was a believer in UFOs. He back in the 50s, with several other flight test engineers, witnessed on 2 occasions aerial phenomena that he couldn't explain. And it's just one thing after another. When I met Bob Lazar, Bob, you couldn't put a gun to his head and convince him that UFOs were real. He got the job at S4, and I believe everything he said. I don't doubt him at all. And a year later, he was a silhouetted person with an altered voice talking about reverse engineering alien spacecraft at a place called S4. And it was shortly thereafter that he actually showed his face and he said who he was. But he's been threatened. This is prior to his disclosure. So we're not alone. I mean, I was also a docent up at Kitt Peak National Observatories. They have 22 optical telescopes up there. One of them, the 2.1 meter, was used by Caltech over a 5-year period using adaptive optics. And it was a 2.1 meter. And they were looking for exoplanets, anything outside of our solar system. And they were taking a postage stamp size area of our galaxy, the Milky Way. And over 5 years, they were able to identify and catalog 8,000 exoplanets. And just before I quit volunteering up at Kitt Peak, we had a meeting of all the astronomers, all the technicians that keep the telescopes operating properly, and all the docents. And the keynote speaker was one of the top guys from the National Science Foundation. And we had pizza first, and then we're all, sort of joking around. And we started talking about exoplanets. I got up and said he had just returned from a conference, worldwide conference of all the astronomers looking for planets outside of our solar system. And based on proven mathematical formulas and not pulling it out of their butt or whatever, as far as the how they come to the conclusion, they calculate for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. You can't cram that number in your head. And he said, out of that incredible number of planets, there are 2 billion, and he emphasized the billion. There are 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar sized brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And if we're the only ones, what a waste of space. Now, our solar system and our galaxy is about 4 billion years old. The universe, as we know it, is just shy of 14 billion years old. Now, will the new telescope, the James Webb Telescope, open up eyes what may be out there? Possible. They have a thing up in down in Chile where it's going to be the giant Magellan telescope, and it's going to have 7 27-foot diameter mirrors, all focusing on one secondary mirror, and they should be able to look back within 100,000 light years of first light. So we're out there looking, and I have to believe that just based on mathematics, there's no way we're the only ones. We can't be. There's just too many things have happened. There's been too many sightings. You look at hieroglyphics, you look at petroglyphs, you look at ancient cave drawings where you have something in the sky, something radiating down. You have people, big heads with big round eyes. What are those? Are they grays? They didn't make that up. They didn't have the internet to move that information around.
Correct.
Yeah, and we have
the grays
UFOs.
are in the Gnostic texts. The grays are in the Gnostic texts.
Vedas, the Vedic texts in India. You also have just UFO sightings pre-Wright brothers, you know? So it can't be all us, can't be all our technology. It has to be something greater than us, sometimes possibly observing what's going on here.
I mean, most of the astronauts, a number of the Apollo astronauts have said that they were being observed while they're on the moon.
Yeah, there was that weird, awkward first meeting. You know, the first press conference when they came back from the moon, and they were like,
Looked like somebody
they
shot their
should have been
dog.
excited, and
We better
Right,
not
and
say
calm down.
anything. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when they interviewed Story Musgrave when he'd been outside of the space shuttle for 5 hours in a repair on the Hubble Space Telescope, and they were adjusting the optics because they ground the glass for a KH-11 spy satellite, and instead of pointing down to the Earth where they knew the focal length, it was going out to space, so they had to put a new set of glasses on it. But they had someone ask them, said, Story, for 5 hours you're just sitting out there, watching the world go by, literally watching the world go by. What were you looking for? And seriously, he said, UFOs. And I think they sort of changed the direction of the interview after that. And my boss, Major General Wayne Gatlin, chased a UFO over Lake Superior in an F-94C in 1955, 1956. It left him in the dust. Every time the weapons radar was turned on this object, it appeared on radar. That's the reason they scrambled. Every time his radar would lock on, the radar would just turn off. It would, and the WISO, the weapons systems operator, he would reset the circuit breakers, try it again. They're scanning it, they send it, they lock on, boom, the radar turns off. And then this is over Lake Superior. So they're heading towards Split Rock. It's an area on the North Shore, and it's right near Finley, which was the Air Force station back then. And the guys in Finley said, it's heading right towards us. It disappeared. We don't know where it went. General Gatlin, he was a major at the time, he said he's in full afterburner, which you can only do for about 90 seconds before you run out of gas. He said, well, the reason they were getting close enough. He said, the reason you can't see it, it's directly above you, hovering. So the guys are going running out, and this thing, General Gatlin said, this thing went straight up. And if you've been in anywhere in rural Canada, northern Minnesota, Montana, whatever, the sky is crystal clear. There's no pollution, and this thing went up, and it was gone, and it was visibility unlimited. Then we had my probably the most ironic or iconic chase of a UFO was in 1972-73 timeframe. There was Dave Fruhoff, Lieutenant Colonel, flying an SR-71. He was on a night training mission. There weren't very many night flights on SR-71s or the predecessor, the A-12, because it was a VFR-only airplane. Later on, when they went away from just purely visible light optics and started going to electronic warfare, they started flying it at night. So Dave's on a night training mission out of Kadena, Okinawa. It's about 11 o'clock at night. He's at 78,000 feet at Mach 2.7, which is between 17 and 1,800 miles an hour ground speed. And there's a 3/4 moon off of his left side, and he's going a straight line. And all of a sudden, he gets a glint of something reflective or metallic off to his right-hand side, 5,000 or 6,000 feet above him, and maybe 5 or 6 miles away. And at first, he thought it was another SR-71, so he gets on secure voice and he contacts Kadena, Okinawa. That's where he's flying out of. And he said, "No, you're up there by yourself." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to go take a look." So he advances the throttles. He's about a 10-degree bank as he's going up, and he's accelerating. At Mach 2.7 at 78,000 feet, the SR-71 is almost in idle mode. When they start going over target, that's when they push the throttles forward a bit, and they want to go over target at least Mach 3. But he's watching this thing, and he's climbing, and he's getting closer and closer. And he's figured when he was still a couple of thousand feet below this object, and still a mile or two away, this thing took off. Now it wasn't a round disc. It had edges to it, and those edges were that's what he was getting the reflection off from the moon. Again, if you've been out in the desert, during a 3/4 moon or a full moon, you could read a book. It's so bright outside. And he said he lost it as it went between 180 and 200,000 feet, and he calculates 8 to 12,000 miles an hour on that range. And after he told me that, and I made it known to a number of people, he was talked to, and he wouldn't talk about it anymore. Other than the fact that he did confirm that Bob Lazar has flown on the red and whites. That's the Janet flights going in, not Area 51. And the reason why he was so familiar with those flights in Area 51 is when he retired from the Air Force, he became the facility manager at Area 51. Now, that's a job I would like to have.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So,
yeah,
I mean, there's two examples. One in the 50s when you couldn't go Mach 1 hardly at all. I mean, it had only been a couple of years since Jaeger had gone Mach 1. And then you have the Blackbird going, 3.2 times the speed of sound at Mach 3.2.
Yeah, there was nothing around that we had, on record anyway, even declassified now that could, explain that kind of acceleration or speed. Yeah.
And the Soviet Union and China, or North Korea, is just a pimple on a gnat's ass. They're just an irritant.
They didn't have hypersonic weapons testing until maybe a decade ago, the earliest. I would say.
Right. I mean, most of the country is in third world status. In America or in the free world where you have capitalism, where you want to be a scientist, okay, that's what you set your sights for. That's what you train for. That's what your educational selections are all related to what you want to become as an adult. In the former Soviet Union, I got to believe it's still the same in Russia and in China. The state determines what you're going to do. You have a propensity to be good at mathematics. Okay, you're going to go into a mathematics related area. Whether you want to be a baseball player or you want to be a ballet dancer, they don't care. This is what you're going to do. So you don't have the burning passion that some of these people that go into the aerospace industry, because this is exciting. This is not some job that you're forced to do because you wanted to put a tutu on and go dancing at with the number one ballet company in the world, and you lose your. If you don't pick what you want to do, you don't have the enthusiasm to do your best. You're going to do enough of it so they don't whack your mom and dad or put them in a gulag or something like that, or they tell you that your children can't be educated and that they're going to be manual labor. Here, you and I determine what we want to do to a certain degree. I mean,
I swear we could talk. I could bring Jim back on and we could go for like 3 hours just alone. And and I have so many questions and so many things I want to ask you and talk to you about. We're here talking about the documentary Rise of the TR-3B. We're here with Darcy Weir, the producer and filmmaker, and also Alara. Alara, I want to give you a chance to speak before the hour's up, and I want to go to you next. You actually filmed that video right here, and that's shown. I think it's shown right here in the intro.
That were on fire.
And,
when I played the footage back, there was a TR-3B sitting there cloaked above.
What the heck is that thing that you filmed?
Well, since we're on the topic, I just want to go ahead and say this, just because what Jim was talking about. So, have you guys heard of? Darcy knows this, I think. Have you guys heard of the Dart craft? It's like I've heard other people talk about it. I've seen them describe it.
Dart, like DART?
No, like DART. Dart. It's like
Dart.
About the size of an SUV. And it's, allegedly one of ours, and it's white It's got tinted windows and it's super advanced. And I've heard a few different people talk about it. Anyway, this ship, which would be one of these super advanced ones that like Ben Rich would have been referring to. So that's what got me into all this. That's what woke me up. That's one of those things decloaked right in front of me, 50 feet. I could have seen in the windows if they weren't tinted.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things that Ed Fouché talked about was these chromatic panels or whatever that he mentioned. They were color changing or basically panels that they could alter with electronically to make them look like the sky or to make them look like whatever. I could imagine maybe we're seeing something like that technology.
I don't know how I used to think, well, I was totally green about this stuff when this happened to me. I didn't know anything about it. So I assumed that it came through like a wormhole or something. I mean, because it went from, it just manifested right in front of me. It went from light to a ship. But I think I now understand that that's just our cloaking technology. When they turn it off, that's just the way it appears when it decloaks.
Yep.
But I still don't fully understand what I saw, other than it had an effect on me that was very dramatic.
Yeah. And you said a lot of people, other people saw it too.
No,
with you.
Well, there was one guy that was with me that witnessed it, but I looked at him when it happened, like, are you seeing this? I think I even said that to him. I could see the look of terror on his face, so I knew he could see what I was seeing. Yeah, and then check this out. 8 drones came around, like military drones. We're watching the whole thing. And then I can't tell you much time transpired, but then I realized, like, because I didn't know, I was like, okay, so then my thought process went through, is this aliens? Okay, if this is aliens, are they going to abduct me? And as soon as that thought hit my mind and it settled, you know what I mean? It got through. I was like, oh, I'm out. And then I just started running. You know what I mean? So I couldn't even tell you how long this was on. It went on for a while. I tried to get my phone to tape it and I couldn't. My phone was dead, of course. But anyway, the point is that, like, I've seen this stuff up close and it's wild. And then shortly after that, we're talking 2 years later, I'm at contact, just not expecting much of anything to happen. And, at the CE5 and this, and then I inadvertently capture, there's 2 of them. If you pay attention to that thing, there's actually 2 of those.
Where can I find the
TR-3B
original
craft.
video? Do you have a link to the original video?
It's on her YouTube.
It's on my YouTube channel.
Where do I find your YouTube channel? So
you gotta type in the whole thing because it's shadow. You can't, if you try to type in a little bit, it won't pop up. You have to type the whole thing like it's written here in 1 foot and 5D. Otherwise, it won't pop up.
1 foot and 5D. Okay. Oh, there you are. All right, so here it is.
Yeah.
Guys.
I don't know how that was.
And you said you filmed this.
Very bottom of videos.
You filmed it right on your cell phone, huh?
Yeah, I had a G6 at the time, an old G6. That's down there. UFO footage compilation. No, it's that one. Yeah, the one to the right is just the TR-3B. The one to the left is annoying. Please don't play that one. I was taping an ET ship that was above the field, and I was tripping out on it and taping it, whatever, and I inadvertently caught those 2 TR-3Bs sitting there above that ship, watching or whatever they were doing.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. There's another one. You can see it right there. There's another one below. You just can't make it out as well as the one above it.
I see it.
And I was taping the white light down there? That's what I was taping, that ship.
That's what you were really looking at.
Yeah, that's what I was watching and taping. And that was right above the CE5 event at contact. So, and when I left, there was no UFOs out there. Like, it was dying off. It was kind of boring. Their stuff had gone on earlier, but it was kind of getting boring or whatever. So I left, and I happened to be like 2 miles away at the time. So I was tripping out taping this thing right here because this was just, above the field doing that type of stuff. I was like, what is this? And I'm taping this thing. This went on for about 30 minutes. And that's when I inadvertently caught those ships right above that, which was right above the field.
Yeah, we've been the United States military has been playing with active camouflage for about 40 years that I'm aware of. And with today's thin film technology, they have foldable smartphones nowadays. I mean, and that's probably technology that's 20 years old. Nothing you see today, we got something great, something just earth shattering. It was probably developed 15 to 20 years ago, and it's now being made public.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of military programs that when you see it, you're really just amazed at how far we've moved, and it's old news, it's old technology.
That's one of the things.
Why did that?
Oh, sorry.
It puzzles me why that ship just decloaked like that right in front of my face. It was very intentional.
Yeah.
And then the dude, when I asked him 20 minutes later, I said, "Tell these people what happened. Tell them." He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." You don't know what I'm talking about? I don't know, man.
They didn't even need the Men in Black to neuralize him. He neuralized himself.
No, they neuralized him. I'm telling you. Why I was allowed to, why I've been allowed or had a lot of things happen. I don't fully understand, other than maybe because I'm the one that'll come out here and talk about it and won't care. You know what I mean? I don't know. I really can't. I don't understand it. But
I've been on a few of these programs, and I've had people say, "Well, what are you holding back?" I said, "Absolutely nothing." I mean, my God, if I have proof of something, if I have seen or photographed something, I'm not going to keep it to myself, because if I go wrap myself around a tree in my car tonight, or I die of a heart attack tonight, that information goes with me. It's gone. It's lost forever. So you have to sit down and you have to share that with people, groups like this.
Yeah, the fact that Alara even got a video like that,
Wow.
it's amazing. Not everybody has really good TR-3B footage, but there's more and more of it coming out. And we featured a fraction of that in the documentary, but just over the years, there's been so much triangular craft, what looks like what people describe as a TR-3B. And I involved Tyler Glockner in the film. He wanted to be part of it because he saw that this was like a very cool subject to cover. And, despite all the bullshittery and gossip coming out of troll factories online saying, "Oh, he got involved because he was blackmailed," or some shit like that. Talk to him yourself, write an email, whatever. He's always been interested in this subject, and he was an invaluable resource for this documentary, because actually a lot of the clips I got were from people like Alara. He did a shout out, I think it was like in November or October, on one of his episodes on one of his YouTube videos, and he said, "Hey, I'm working with this documentary filmmaker, Darcy Weir. He's trying to get as much footage of what could possibly be a TR-3B. Please send an email to his email, yada, yada." I got hundreds of emails, and I went through all of it. Some of it was just pictures. I didn't want to use as many pictures because obviously, a picture can be faked pretty easily. It could be just computer generated. Video is a little bit harder to do, and I tried to use the best quality videos that came through to my email. And I shared.
I hate to interrupt, but I have to jump out of here in just a minute. So
yeah, I'm gonna check out your show after.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. That's a lot. This is Alara. If you want to jump out, right now,
Thank you. And I would have never known without. I would have never known that this was being done, and I would have never gotten this to Darcy had I not been watching Secure Team and known that they were making this film and that I had this footage. So, things happen for a reason. I'm glad that it did, because I needed it to get out somewhere and go somewhere. Because people need to know. And it's important when we capture stuff like this.
Thank you for your
So-
contribution.
And
Honestly,
Alara, before
Yeah,
you
that was
go,
good.
if I was going to
Thank
go to
you.
your channel and watch one of these videos, which one should I watch?
Depends on what you're into. It depends on. I do a lot of different stuff. It depends what you're into. But we do Space Force News. Okay, so me and my co-host, Loyal to the Foil, we do Space Force News on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. I pushed it back to 10 p.m. tonight because of this. But we go live every Sunday at 9 p.m. We do Space Force defense, science, technology, disclosure, UFOs, kind of all rolled into one. We do that every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. But I'm going to be doing it right now after I leave. So tonight.
Sweet. And I'm going to be on Loyal to the Foil tomorrow night, too.
Oh, yeah. You're going to be on with us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, right? 8 p.m. Eastern, you'll be on. And we want to go into some, some of this nuts and bolts, UFO technology and propulsion kind of stuff with you, among other things. Because you've really piqued my interest in that. And it was a blessing to be a part of this with you guys. And I'm glad I got to meet you, Jim. I haven't gotten to meet you yet. And Jeremy.
Very cool, Alara. Great to meet you. And thank you for coming on and with us. And everyone, go check out her channel. Looks like you got some new subscribers already. So awesome.
See you, Alara.
All right, guys. Have a good show. Good to see you again, Darcy.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later. See you tomorrow, Jeremy.
Yes.
Good night.
Definitely. Good night.
If I can figure out how to log out.
I'll there. I just put her backstage. All right, cool. So we're here with Darcy Weir, producer of the Rise of the TR-3B documentary. I was hoping Tyler would jump on here and join us before the hour ends up, but I don't. There is a lot of trolls here and stuff, and
I think he wanted to avoid that, and there's just been, since I released the film, there's just been nonstop trolling. Like, of it. I've even talked to you about it, and it literally is. I'm being followed around by Third Phase and Goof-On's trolls, and it's like they don't want to listen to logic. They don't want to realize that this guy has been using my content for a long time without my permission, and those guys, Third Phase, we started off on a good foot, but they're just completely whack, in my opinion, and can't be trusted, and it's too bad. Like, if they want to send people at me, go ahead. Like, I don't give a shit. But at least respect the research, at least respect everybody that's getting involved in this shit, and don't try and attack everybody. It doesn't make sense. You're not doing any service to this research field. And I know that, some people are just fanboys and they can't get over that. They want to be a part of some kind of army, so to speak. But just chill.
Yeah, it should be about the research, and if someone is wrong, it shouldn't be personal. And I don't agree with some of some of it's turning into like WWE style. I swear I'm watching like Hulk Hogan. I'm gonna kick your ass, and it's like, what does it matter if you can kick my ass or I kick you, and I'm gonna beat you senseless, threatening to go and punch people and stuff. And
people don't realize, it's like what's with all this violent shit? Just you even released a video not too long ago with Dan Benkert, and you guys questioned the veracity of this S4 facility Google Maps thing that was released by Third Phase, which is complete.
That's another thing about
it's bullshit. Too. It's bullshit, and it's
I thought that was like a fun little conversation, and we made
and it became a war
bet, right? And I was willing to drop it, but I thought that it was over, and I seen the other day that they're posting that I owe them $500 because of I bet him $500 that it was a water guzzler, but I still haven't proven that it isn't a water guzzler. We haven't actually figured out what it is. It says that there's a mine there, though, on the topology map that I found. It says that there was an old mine there.
Logically, how anybody could believe that it would be on Google Maps.
But then they bet me $10,000 that we couldn't put a new pin that said, S4 anywhere we wanted. And, because that place isn't where Bob described S4. Bob said it's right on the lake bed. He said that they brought it out of the hangar and tested this thing right on the dry lake bed, right there.
Yeah.
The place that they're saying that this facility is up in the mountains, and It's not even in the right location. It's a couple miles from where Bob said S4 was.
But it could be the entrance to S4.
You think they're gonna go in through that like dusty
They would go
pad,
into. They would go
concrete
into.
pad?
I think they would go into
Los
Area
Alamos.
51. Area 51's already got the facilities there. You know, you already got enough equipment out there to engage in an operation like a mining operation of that magnitude. I don't think you'd be able to do it from.
And
they had
Los Alamos has all kinds of underground construction.
They had a mine shaft there, though. There's a mine there, but I doubt that like it goes for that far. And it's also on the test range side of stuff, so it's that whole area is. But
They have equipment at the Nevada test site. They can drill a 36-foot diameter hole through solid granite about a foot an hour. Now they've had that's how they bored all the deep when they were doing underground nuclear testing. That's what they used that equipment to go down 1,500 feet. 1,300 feet, and that's where they put the bomb. They'd put all the sensors down there. Then they'd fill it back up with dirt and rock and
so
whatever else they're going to plug the hole with.
1 foot an hour.
About that.
So for 24 hours, if they run it continuously all day, they'll get 24 feet. That's about 25 feet. So that's much less than the 5 miles per day that Philip Schneider said that they get with that rock conflagration technology.
Well, I think
your number is much better.
He was talking about a nuclear powered tunneling machine that has like a slurry pipe that like liquefies whatever rock is in front of it and turns it into like part of the reinforcement to the tunnel. But that's called what was it called? A subterrane. And
the subterrane vehicle.
There are actual patents of that are out there in the wild. But again, there's
practical. Do they work?
There's patents of the TR-3A. We just don't know.
Also patents for Tesla's motors that he released, but Tesla's not using those for his boring machines to build his tunnels. So this boring company. So why not? And if it's real technology, why didn't Tesla get a hold of it? What is Elon Musk part of the conspiracy?
Well, I don't think he's really gonna get his hands on a nuclear powered engine. Are you?
Oh, that might be it. The tree. That's the nukes. There we go.
Yeah,
he's a sharp enough engineer. He could develop his own nuclear powered unit. I'm sure.
Yeah, if they let him, if he could get around the problems with playing with nuclear stuff. I don't know.
As long as it's not weapons grade. The medical industry uses a large quantity of highly radioactive materials. So it's an area that they have to keep tabs on every single gram of radioactive material, so it doesn't get lost or doesn't get a little bit here, a little bit there, and now someone has 2 pounds worth of plutonium. Let's go make a dirty bomb, or better yet, let's make a hydrogen bomb.
Yeah. So Elon's probably a better engineer than you, but.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is a sales guy. He's more of a marketing person than he is.
He's smart, man. He knows his stuff.
He was a computer engineer, but back in the day. And there's lots of speculation of how. I mean, he was backed by tons of money by his family coming out of South Africa, like a gem mine. So that's apparently how he got a lot of his money to start PayPal. Well, that was XPay, I think, PayX or whatever. And then he came in and became an investor and moved himself to the CEO position. Same thing with Tesla. Tesla was not started by Elon Musk. It was actually started by 2 other guys. He came in with money and he moved them out.
But he moved them out with a lot of money in their pocket, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, Elon's another thing. We were having a good conversation right before, and I'm, it's kind of sad. Alara had to take off right before. She was like the first one in behind backstage before we started, and we were getting real into this whole disclosure thing, and a lot of people, they made that film on Elizondo. There's been this whole controversy on, people calling him part of a psyop. That this film came out and saying, his dad worked for the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, and that means, like, he's potential deep state CIA ties. That's as pretty as deep state and CIA as you can get if you're involved in the Bay of Pigs thing, because there was a lot of that was definitely some deep CIA stuff there. But again, what's the role of the CIA, and what's the CIA been doing historically? Are there people in the CIA that are interested in disclosure? Is this soft disclosure, coordinated disclosure? It's certainly not, the type of scientific intelligence that and the real nuts and bolts stuff that we get into sometimes on this channel. But it is a generalization for the masses, because the masses are just kind of so oblivious and distracted and preoccupied. It's so hard to keep up on life. It's so hard for me to even move my life around to make time to do a podcast like this. That it's hard for the average person to pay attention to all this stuff and really, so I guess we kind of need, some of this mainstream limelighting, I suppose you call it. Like Bob Lazar put Area 51 on the map back in the late 80s, early 90s, and helped, bring a lot of that stuff to the attention. But how close did Bob get to actual tech, some of these actual technologies and stuff? It's arguable, whether or not the Element 115 stuff, that was his main disclosure, and that I've always had questions about, because it doesn't seem to line up with a lot of the other stuff I know that they were doing out at the time out there with the proton beams, also the metamaterials and invisibility cloaking technologies and stuff. But Bob's an interesting guy. But Jim, I wanted to ask you more questions about Bob, maybe.
Sure.
Did you ever go to Desert Blast?
No, I lived in Minnesota during the whole time I knew Bob, and it wasn't always. I had a wife and 2 kids, and it wasn't always easy for me to get away on weekends, and that's when Desert Blast was. And he would not announce the location or the date until about 72 hours before Desert Blast. Now, I did sit in his garage with my son James and I and 2 other people, and we were making the fireworks and the explosive stuff in his garage. And he lived right off West Charleston. And I think if his neighbors knew, he had about, probably close to 1,000 pounds worth of explosives in his garage behind a false wall. And he is a master fireworks maker. And
I worry about.
He made a rocket car and a rocket bike, right?
Yeah, he had a little ramjet powered bicycle. He had his jet powered Lamborghini Countach.
Jet.
Was it a Lamborghini? I thought
it was a Lamborghini.
Honda.
No, it was a Lamborghini body on a jet car is what it was. It was a fiberglass body. But when George Knapp was investigating who Bob Lazar was, he went to Albuquerque, he went to Sandia Labs, and it turns out that Bob's name is in the phone book of employees at Sandia Lab during the time frame he said he worked there.
What Los Alamos, not Sandia. Right.
Sandia Lab. He worked for Sandia before he went to the desert.
Okay.
But George found his name and the phone number he said he was in, and the room number Bob said he worked out of, and the names of the 2 guys that were in the same lab with him were in that same book. It's probably the thing that cemented.
I always thought that Knapp was talking about the book at Los Alamos, the Los Alamos phone book.
The phone book, yeah.
It may be Los Alamos. I wasn't taking notes back then, but I thought it was Sandia Labs. But that's either one. They're both out of that area.
Yeah, I
But
thought it was the
when
Meson Physics facility at Los Alamos that
when
that he was
when,
working at.
when I was at the Pentagon during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I had Bob Lazar's W-2 from the Navy organization that paid him. I blocked out his Social Security number, and I was just waiting for some dead time where I had nothing to do for an hour or so to see if I can track down the Navy location that was paying him. And at the time I was in E6. I'm in uniform. I find a Navy organization that's similar but not exactly the organization that paid Bob. And I had like an hour to kill. So I wandered over that end of the Pentagon. The door was, it was an open office. I go in there and there was a young Lieutenant JG behind the desk. And I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this Navy operation is located?" And I handed him Bob's W-2 and he looks at it and he says, "Excuse me for a minute, Sergeant." And he gets up, he walks into the 2-star Admiral's office. He's in there with 15, 20, 30 seconds. Comes out and he said, "The Admiral will see you now." Now, anybody who's been in the military, especially in the Navy or the Marines, you're not going to have a 2-star Admiral talk to an Air Force puke NCO unless I really pulled his chain. And I walked into his office. I gave him a sharp salute. And instead of saying "at ease," which they would normally say, he said "parade rest." So I'm standing there rigid. And he's holding the W-2 up and he said, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this piece of paper, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you'll be the most sorry son of a bitch in NCO United States military. Do you understand me, Sergeant?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And with that, he put Bob's W-2 into the shredder.
So what was the name? What was the name of the Admiral? Do you remember?
No.
And that was at the similar office. So Bob's W-2 says the U.S. Office of Department of Naval Intelligence, which was closed after World War II and turned into the Office of Naval Intelligence. So you went to the ONI at the Pentagon?
It was the closest thing, but it wasn't the exact wording of the organization, of the Department of Navy that paid him. But whatever that Lieutenant JG, he may have been, I had to be Lieutenant JG, it could be a lieutenant commander. Whatever pulled his chain was something very, very important, else he wouldn't have gotten up and gone into the 2-star's office. This is something, I spent 27 years in the military. I had, most of the time I was a reservist, but I had 5 years active duty. I had a above top secret clearance for 27 years. And you don't react that way. You don't have a piece of paper of some guy who isn't really important to a Navy department that doesn't really exist. And when you get a reaction like I got from the 2-star, he was pissed and he was upset.
Why do you think he was so mad? He's like, I just like think he might have just seen the department Bob worked for, but if it was such a classified program, there's no way like he would have just seen Bob's name and been like, "Oh, I know who this is," and everything. He wouldn't readily have access to that kind
This is 1990, 91. Bob Lazar hadn't really, become a superstar in the UFO community. Not quite yet.
Yeah, but in some of this intelligence, network, he might be someone that has taken their attention.
You don't have a 2-star Navy admiral bring in a enlisted NCO and threaten him.
Unless he has some kind of
unless the piece of paper I had really was
real.
The key to the kingdom. There are of all the zip codes in Washington D.C. They're all 20201 through I think 20247. I think it is, but there's a group of zip codes that start out with 202, and I think it's like 37 on up to like 4.3 go to places that don't exist. You can't find them anywhere. And I was told that by a buddy of mine who works at Joint Chiefs. And he said, I can't tell you where it's at, but I know that there are zip codes that go to places that literally do not exist anywhere that you can find in the federal government as far as non-classified sources. So, Bob told me face to face a number of years ago, it's the biggest mistake he ever did was go public. Said it ruined my life. I didn't make any money off this. I just felt that the world needed to know. And people say, well, he's a plant this and plant that. No. I mean, the day I met Bob Lazar, I was with John Lear. This was early January of '89. And we were heading up, I was in Las Vegas, and we were heading up to Tonopah, and we're going up US 95. We're just north of Scotty's Junction, which is famous for having a legal house of ill repute that the government took over, and through the mismanagement, they ran it out of business. I don't know how you can do that, but they did. And we were about 10 miles north of Scotty's Junction, and an F-117 went flying right about 1,500 feet above us, diagonally across the road. I about crashed the car because no one had seen a picture of it other than a real bad photo that they used with the telephoto lens, and it was
Blurred.
compressed, blurred and fuzzy and backlit. And so we get into Tonopah, we grab a quick bite, we jump in the car, we head down US 6, and about 14 miles, and there's a big sign that says Tonopah Test Range. We turn down that road. It's 18 miles to the main gate of the Tonopah Test Range facility. The man camp is right there at the fence. So we drove along the north side of the fence line, which is in public lands, and you can look down on the whole base. I mean, it's all right there. And way to the north, we found a big black dot with a light on the bottom, and then a little white dot with a white on the bottom. I said, oh my gosh, that's got to be an F-117 with a chase. And this is before digital photography. I was shooting Kodacolor film. And back then in the 70s and 80s, they had a thing called photomats. They were taken over now by baristas selling coffee, but you would drop off your film. You'd be in a parking lot of a grocery store or a shopping center, and you just drop your film off one day and come back the next day, and it was processed and printed. So I'm shooting Kodacolor 100. It's a good fine-grained color film. I have a Nikon. I can't remember. I can't remember the number of my Nikon, but it was one of the better ones at the time. I had really good glass, and this thing's coming up, and also, I'm seeing it's filling up the viewfinder, and I start shooting. I didn't want to go too crazy, but I went through all 36 exposures, and my whole body was surging. It was like I was a 10 or 11-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the first time. My body's going like this. So I didn't know if I got a decent non-blurred film, image. So we jump in the car, we head on out, going down US 6 until we hit which is now the extraterrestrial highway, Nevada 375. We stopped for a quick bite in Rachel, the little lady inn. I've been going to Rachel since '87, going through there. So we don't get back to Las Vegas until after 9 o'clock that night. The photomats are all closed. And right after we got there, John Lear said, hey, I got a new friend. He just moved here from Albuquerque. He's going to be coming over here in about 10 minutes. I said, great. So about 10 minutes later, I hear a knock on the door. John goes and answers the door, and this nice young man comes out and comes into Lear's study, which is an event by itself. Lear's study. It's really quite it should be in a museum. But he's introduced himself as Bob Lazar. He had been, working in Albuquerque as a physicist. And I told him what my problem was, that I had some print film with the F-117. I don't know if I had anything that was crisp that I could use. So I have to wait until tomorrow. Then I probably have to wait until the next day. So it's going to be 2 or 3 days till I see what I have. And Bob said, well, I have a C-41 processing unit at my place out in West Charleston. Let's head over there. I said, sure. So we jump in his car and we're about a block from John Lear's house. And Lazard looks at me and says, I feel sorry for that, that dumb son of a bitch, Lear. I said, what do you mean you feel sorry for him? And Lazar said, he's from this world famous aviation company. I mean, his dad gave us Learjet, among other things, and many, many other things. And the fool believes in UFOs. So I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. You can put a gun to my head to convince me UFOs are real. That's Bob Lazar before he went to work out in the desert. And his story has stayed consistent for 30 years.
Why do you think Bob hasn't given a technical briefing? He said he said he was going to give like a technical briefing before a bunch of scientists, and he could answer more questions and talk more about the technology. All we've gotten is like the element 115 stuff, and a little bit about the gravity A wave and B wave from some of the films, that he had made subsequently there, which have not gotten a lot of positive feedback with it. I mean, it hasn't like changed anything in 30 years. We still don't have anti-gravity ships. If
that we know of.
Yeah, but if he worked on this and was really that in depth in the propulsion, he should be able to tell us more about the technology or something.
He's been ridiculed almost from day one. They've tried every means possible to try to destroy the man. And that's why he didn't say anything for 25 years. And I think George Knapp, working with Jeremy, not you, but the other Jeremy, to do the disclosure of Bob Lazar, which was really a PR piece for Jeremy, not Bob, because it was mostly Jeremy. I'm going to be at a function in Las Vegas in the end of April, and it's a UFO thing.
Okay.
And
I think I might know about that.
Dave Scott putting it together, and there's going to be it's going to be a fun weekend. Michael Schratt's going to be there. Michael's like my kid.
Michael's great.
Yeah, I talk to Michael about every other day, but from there, I'm going to hopefully. I've talked about it to him in the past. I'm going to go spend a day or two with Bob Lazar.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's awesome. I who I talked to recently. I haven't talked to him in a while. I'm gonna email him again and see if. But Gene Huff, I actually got in touch with Gene Huff and had a couple of. He's not too happy with Jeremy Corbell and his work on that film. He thinks that there's a lot of the story that Jeremy left out and didn't even mention John Lear in the film at all.
Jeremy was promoting Jeremy. Everything else was not even secondary. It was sort of by the way,
It was him in the film the whole for half the film. Him filming himself in his bathroom.
Who films themselves on taking a cell phone call in the bathroom? It makes no sense.
Yeah. No, I just.
Or if you watch Skinwalker Ranch, there's like a 2-minute scene of him walking across a field in his hipster boots and shit. And you're like, what does this have to do with anything?
Nothing. He's a promoter. He's promoting himself.
Well, whatever. It's sad, and I didn't even really see. I don't think you made it in the documentary either, Jim.
Nope. He interviewed me in Santa Monica. We were at a restaurant, and he recorded our interview on video. I mean, on audio only. And I talked for 4 hours. He said,
he's got all that too, man.
He said, we're gonna. Says I'm putting together a thing about Bob, and said we're definitely going to have you in it. Okay, you know how to get hold of me, and he never did. Never made any attempt. And I really don't care. I mean, I'm not in this for fame or glory. I do this because it's extremely interesting. It keeps my mind working. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 77 here in a month,
Oh,
and
geez.
I still have an incredibly good memory. I have a fun life. I mean, everywhere I go, I drive in my Corvette, and I just
You got a hell of a book collection published too, man.
I
You
have
got some
29 books. 27 of them are in print. My
yeah.
28th book, I'm waiting to get on a Ohio class arsenal boat, one of the SSGNs, because I did a three segment books, starting with the Los Angeles class, and then Know Where Your Adversary Is. Then I went Seawolf, Virginia class on volume 2, and then volume 3 is the Ohio boats. And I do this all because when I like technology, I'm a hardware guy. And because of my love affair with the Blackbird and Area 51 and the Skunk Works and whatever, I've sort of fallen in and tripped in, fallen into people that have UFO connections or have done stuff that you want to go, wow, or seen things that are incredible or chase things that are incredible. And it was probably something I was meant to do. And I love it. I really do. I don't, there's people I won't talk to. Jeremy's one of them. I think he's abused that privilege, but he's about the only one. Most everybody else that I've dealt with, I can't, and I know Darcy's had some jackasses trying to do a number on him, and it's criminal. But I don't discriminate against anybody, and I don't care how big your program is. If you have one person or if you have 100,000 people on, I'm retired. I'd like to have my brain exercised as often as possible. And in this community, I found a new home. I have, for the first time in a long time, when I'm a group, and there's a lot of oddballs in our community. I mean, there's 3 of them right here. We're all 3 totally different, but we have a common interest in things that go bump in the night. And I've always been that person that wants to find the answer to things that our government doesn't want us to know. And if in
Yeah,
19
absolutely.
in,
Bob
in
got me
19
into that.
yeah, in 1968, I wrote letters to Lockheed Skunk Works, Air Force, Department of Defense, Secretary of the Air Force, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I said, I'm willing to pay the published price that was on Dinsfo's or whatever it was way back when, on color 8x10s of the Blackbird in the air. They don't need it on the ground, in the air. And their official policy was not to cooperate. So because they didn't cooperate, I started digging. And the more I dug, the more I found out. The more I found out, the deeper I dug. As it turns out, and this is according to Ben Rich, and that's probably why we became pen pals, is I became the most knowledgeable person from a historical point of view on the entire Blackbird program. And that just tickles the hell out of me. I mean, it's just...
No, that's what happens with, like when I started researching anti-gravity because of watching Bob Lazar on Unsolved Mysteries back in the 90s. And, now I've become one of the experts on anti-gravity because I've gone through and documented every single program that the government's ever done and every single scientist who ever worked on it, their theories, and then categorized it all and gone through it all. Then interviewed half the people too.
And that's good. Yeah. That's going to be an amazing documentary on its own, man. Honestly, you have to do that. Maybe. You have to.
I mean, so I do this because I enjoy the company. I've been doing this for over 50 years. And I will continue to do it until I'm, a worm motel or whatever you want to call it. I do it because it keeps my brain fresh. I do it because I have a ton of experiences, and I've been blessed with an extremely good memory. As I get older, your memory is not as good as it once was, but I can still relate to things that happened to me when I was a kid. All it takes is something to trigger that memory, and it's usually music. I love music. And if I ever reincarnated, I want to come back as a bass player in a funk band.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's trolls out there. There are people who want it, who have nothing better to do in their life is to go after, people like Darcy and other friends of mine who've been ridiculed, and they throw shit at them, to see what will stick. But you're going to find that in almost anything where you're pushing the envelope, and when you're asking questions that people don't want you to ask, let alone answer. I mean, when I did the very first book, I did
or
the
just
very
jealousy.
First,
Lots of jealousy out there, like people that sit there and just create this echo chamber of their own bullshit thoughts that end up being motivated by jealousy. Like, that's all I can think with this recent stuff that's been going on. It's like, just get away, stop talking to me, not interested in what you have to say. I think it's not credible and it's not contributing. It's actually just super negative, and it's sad that it's this whole echo chamber of folks. They're really taking off and attacking people left, right, and center. It's not helping.
Like,
and this is a small community too.
There was a lot of people that attacked TTSA when it first came out, and I had questions about what their motivations were, and a lot of their claims and everything, and it ended up being, some of my questions ended up being kind of suspicions, ended up being right, because they took a lot of money under the guise that they were going to declassify this technology and build us a spacecraft, and promise all their investors that they were going to build that they were basically going to get insights into very lucrative technologies that when they came out they'd be getting a huge payoff. And I kind of saw that as like, not really what's going on, because they weren't talking enough about the science, and they it seemed motivated by money and hype, rather than, a genuine interest in, developing and bringing this technology out, which I understood a lot better than them about, the process and the I didn't have much faith in this rock star Tom DeLonge's ability to build us an actual spacecraft. And so I didn't, rather than just insulting them and trolling it, I actually created my own space, company to compete with them, just to show people, what really takes, and how hard this problem really is. And I think, the science is really all that matters, because I got sucked into a lot of the drama, and I was going through a lot of negative stuff in my own personal life at the time. So that trickled down and worked its way into my and I fed into a lot of these trolls too. So, and people called me a troll for my stances on a lot of this stuff. But I guess, at the end of the day, it's not about, we're not competing for a spot on the stage, so much. It's you'll get your spot if you do the hard work and you keep at it and you just keep doing the hard work. They can't deny you a spot on the stage. You're eventually going to get your own spot and be doing that. So
I mean, like, in terms of your research, just in the documentary, I showed a fraction of it, right? And I went back to one of your very first videos in 2008, talking about the fact that we have ARVs, and basically we have to assume that if there are ARVs, that there has to be some of our technology out there in the sky that we're misidentifying as, extraterrestrial.
Right, that was a huge part. That was a great thing in the film that you had. Tyler started right off in the film with that. It was like, well, we're starting to learn that maybe some of this stuff is our own technology that we just don't even know about. It's like just this advanced technology that not a lot of people know about. But yeah, there's a lot of the trolls, and people don't like that word, so they wanted me to define what a troll is. So a troll is someone who hides under the bridge and prevents other people from crossing it, or throws, messes with anyone who tries to cross a bridge, right? That's what a troll is. The difference between people who aren't trolls and aren't trolls is that people who build bridges to other things and try to bridge that knowledge, versus the people that try to block people from crossing those bridges.
And there's a lot of that going on, for sure. There's a
Yes.
ton of that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like you were talking about, trying to reverse engineer this mercury-based rotating
Oh, if we
MFD,
wanted to
right?
actually do that experiment, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
with
a
your
lot of
new
interest.
company. And I think that's exactly what we need in order to further prove what possibly, we talk about in the film. Like, is this stuff producible
Could we
from
measure
a
extreme
physics
massive
lab like
effects?
yours?
Right. Well, NASA did it with Gravity Probe B with these super round spheres of niobium, or I think they made them out of, and they actually sent this into space in early 2002, 2003, and got positive results. So they measured the gravitomagnetic drag of the Earth through space time, and you know um, I think that was super cool that NASA did this experiment, and now it's mainstream science that can't be denied. And but again, could we maybe we could build I've seen guys take mercury and they get it rotating with we could build an experiment and get some mercury rotating and see if we can get this enough to and see if we can create a large enough effect to actually get hovering or anything or any kind of weight loss. And
Yeah.
that's what we try to do in the lab is find better ways to measure weight loss without error or without mismeasurement. And we find, different experiments to do and try that, and then
And
measure.
supposedly, the MFD, which is this mercury-based engine, only produced 80% of the weightless effect on the craft, and that's why each corner of the craft, this triangle, has like this light. People say, hey, why would a top secret spy craft give away itself with lights on each corner? And I'll just go back to Laura's testimony.
Yeah.
She couldn't see it with her own naked eye. It's the camera that could pick it up, and a lot of our cameras can see beyond the visual spectrum of a human eye.
Yeah, a little bit deeper into the infrared. So if it's a heat source that's operating in that sub-infrared region, it could be invisible to the naked eye, but it would be picked up on a camera. Yeah, and those thrusters in the corner, they're basically to vector the craft around, actually get it to move. And then there's the whole other theory that that these are spy blimps that when in the late 1970s, or I think it was maybe early 70s, maybe 71, that the U.S. Navy officially ended the blimp program or retired its blimp fleet, and so it didn't. Some of
You
these
have a
blimps,
Skunk Works blimp right there too.
It's for sale, by the way. The P791, it's for sale.
Yeah.
They've deflated the bag, but all the hardware, everything they need, someone who wants to use it for mining or whatever, it's for sale. Now, one thing I didn't get into earlier, and I've mentioned it with Darcy a number of times. I spent 2.5 hours on June 3rd of 2021 with Jeff Babion, who's the vice president and general manager of Lockheed Skunk Works. I went there for a book signing, my 75 years of the Skunk Works. And we were heading over to the U-2 operation over at Site 2 there at Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale. We're in the back of the limousine. I look him right in the eye and I say, okay, Jeff, what is Lockheed Skunk Works' involvement in using alien technology in craft? And he looked at me. One, I think he was surprised I had the balls to ask the question. But he did. I look him right in his eyes, and you can tell a lot by if someone is not a professional liar, like a politician or whatever. He said, Jim, this is the honest God truth. I have absolutely no knowledge of any alien technology, UFO technology used in any system here at Skunk Works. That doesn't mean it wasn't here earlier before I came here, and I'm not cleared to see it because I'm not worried about what happened in the past. I'm working on what's going to happen in the future on programs. He said it's not Lockheed's official policy, but I believe that we can't be alone. The universe is just too big. And I thanked him for his answer. And then we went off and spent the rest of the afternoon at the U-2 operation. So I think he was taken back by the fact that I asked him that question, but I honestly believe he gave me a truthful answer as he knows it.
I think the major leap for a like mainstream physicist to get over when you ask the question, are we being visited? And, is the ET phenomenon being suppressed, right? They'll say, well, we have the law of thermodynamics. And how are you going to explain to me some civilization had traveled from this part of the part of the galaxy, for example, all the way over here, and they can see us and fly around our planet? And I mean, I put the question to you, Jeremy, do you have this cognitive dissonance when it comes to questioning the laws of physics and allowing maybe not imagination, but just logical, leaps in science that could possibly lead to a civilization that might be 1,000 years ahead of us in terms of technological development? Would you say to yourself, okay, when you hear other scientists that say, Bob Lazar, for example, he looks at this craft and he says, this looks like magic. The technology is so far ahead. We don't see any wires connecting things. We don't see any what we would know back in the 80s, right? It's all to the nano level.
It's not, right? They don't push electrons around. It's much easier to push photons around, but photons don't travel inside material. They turn into what are called excitons or exciton polaritons. And that's a lot of the science that I believe how this stuff works, because it's all quantum mechanics. And you go back and the physicists. All right, first off, you said it was the second law of thermodynamics. That's entropy, and I don't think that that's what you meant to say, because that's not what they would cite for what the vast distances is what aliens can't get. And
it's the energy that would drive their craft. I think it comes back to relativity, and thermodynamics is just like energy. We always think of fossil fuels being what can run things, or nuclear.
Maybe that view of entropy, and we think of this very classical view of the world, but as the DoD report that came out in ATIP, it have that one slide, and it says, I love putting that slide around because it says right on the slide, what was once considered the phenomena is now quantum mechanics or quantum physics. And I think we figured that out back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, because we got pieces of something and it went to Material Command. I really believe that. I believe that other people saved pieces of this, and it's come out over the years, and some of them have gotten confiscated. But I believe there's still pieces out there, and still something out there.
What other scientists would be working at?
So they
would Dan Sheckman was there, and then what other materials would be observed by other scientists that went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Air Force Materials Command?
So the Material Command at Wright-Patterson did contract Battelle Memorial Institute, which was the top metallurgists in the country probably at the time, right in about 40 minutes up the road in Columbus, Ohio, next to Dayton. So I know that they contracted Battelle because a number of scientists were involved. Howard Cross, the director of Battelle, was involved in Project Blue Book. It came out that he was involved in a secret subdivision of Project Blue Book that dealt with the more classified and science-related stuff, including the materials, the end of Blue Book, and so that material went under the director of Howard Cross, and there was a number of scientists, metallurgists, who reported, a guy named Elroy John Center, I believe his name is, and he worked at Battelle and was given material that he was told, came from Russian, a Russian craft, and was told to analyze it, and he said there's no way it came from a Russian craft, and it was something, it was definitely some alien something, and he never, it never went out of his mind after he saw it, and he told his daughter about it before he died, and that's the only person he told. It was like one of those things. So you have these stories of people that worked at Ray Patterson, that woman that moved to Oregon and started a new life after she left but she was like the secretary, and she said that one guy came in one day and gave her a piece of that memory foil and showed it to her right on her desk, and then put it in his pocket real quick and left. So there's all these stories of people who worked with or around these materials and stuff.
And I think that's, not to cut you off too much here, go back to it, but I'm just saying, when you hear about stories where people say that they've indirectly found knowledge of UFOs or, us being not alone, you look at even the NASA space program. I mean, people don't even realize that third-party contractors, like you mentioned, Patel, there's Belcom. Belcom was instrumental in landing us on the moon.
Yeah.
Instrumental. Without Belcom's engineers and all of their top scientists, we would have never made it to the moon. And I mean, there's probably some trolls that are in the chat saying, we never went to the moon, but we did.
Right.
But the thing is, and my friend, Kerry Martinuk, he interviewed this former Belcom engineer. And this guy basically outlined all of this stuff to him and basically said a lot of the stuff to do with the moon that is in the public is a lie, but that lie is used to cover up what they really saw up there and what really happened in outer space. And I think a lot of that's still going on. But it's just so funny that you always hear about these third-party contractors that get illuminated, they get exposed to this truth, and a lot of them don't really talk about it. This guy talked to Kerry Martinuk, who's like a hardcore NASA researcher and dug up all kinds of UFO.
How do you spell that?
He's a Canadian guy, another Canadian. I'm Canadian. Kerry, C-A-R-Y, M-A-R-T-Y-N-U-I-K. No. Kerry Martinuk. N-I-U-K. Sorry.
N-I-U-K. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, this guy interviewed this Belcom engineer, and this guy laid out, yeah, you got it, that so much of what was done in space during the Apollo era was just completely glossed over with very menial facts. But the DoD, the Department of Defense, has been involved in space activities since day one, year one. And NASA is an instrument. It's a scientific organization that's directed to space, that's basically a part of the DoD. They're not going to be going into space without some kind of military backing and classification models. So if something happens out there, it has to be deeply classified. And you look at the Brookings Institute and their collaboration with NASA, with the
there's only certain people that could handle that kind of truth or information, and there's only a few people, very few people would have been told, and they would have been top-level scientists. Again, they would have had to have really high security clearances, so they probably would have picked, people from, Atomic Energy Commission, because they were already had the infrastructure from the Manhattan Project that was, already used to stovepiping operations and keeping secrets and all that stuff post-World War II. So it makes sense. Two of the guys I've identified, I think John von Neumann, the human calculator, one of the best mathematicians out at Los Alamos on the Manhattan Project, John von Neumann. He published 4 months after Roswell, he published a paper on self-replicating space probes, like basically space probes that could build copies of themselves, and that was right after Roswell. So
Autonomous. Yeah.
it's, and he would have been one of the guys. He was working right at Sandia at the time. It's literally, I drove from Sandia. I drove from Albuquerque out to the Roswell crash site in Corona, New Mexico, New Mexico. It took probably like 4 hours. So he was right there, right in the right proximity. Von Neumann, and then I think that later on, when the materials went to Wright-Patterson, they stayed there, and they eventually, they eventually went to Battelle when the time was right, and they got the scientists and everything set up with Cross and everything over at Battelle.
Mm-hmm.
And when they went to Battelle, Battelle their best metallurgists didn't even know what they were and couldn't figure out. So they had to talk to the most, knowledgeable, metallurgy theorists in the world at the time, who was, of course, John Archibald Wheeler. And then right after Wheeler, I think, got a hold of that, probably 1952 is when I think Wheeler got a hold of it, because that's when he started publishing on a lot of the it from bit, the theory called it from bit. This whole idea that, on the quantum scale, we're actually digital. Even though we're built up of trillions and trillions of these, atoms, on the quantum scale, we're actually digital.
We're avatars.
So if you were to master quantum mechanics on a level deep enough, you could, digitally, do anything. So you could digitally edit, this wall to make it so it's like Jello, and I can just move through it. Or I could.
And that's what like abductees kind of commonly report, that they just got like pulled through a wall or through a ceiling, as if it like wasn't even tangible anymore, or not even there. And it's like, you just had a like highly advanced possible extraterrestrial craft above your house, and maybe they're master quantum mechanics, and engineers.
It was like what Ben Rich said to me just before he died. If you've seen movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. And the other question, why did NASA cancel Apollo 18, 19, and 20?
Yeah, I think the rumor is that aliens said, don't come back to the moon anymore, right? Yeah. But the more plausible reason is that we just decided, okay, enough of this public farce of a space exploration. Why don't we just go deep black and start doing this stuff off the record? I think that's more plausible. It makes more sense. And they get to test out stuff like an anti-gravitic plane that can go into space. That's possible. But, you go back to the Brookings Institute and the Brookings Report. In 1960, they did the Brookings Report, which was commissioned by NASA. The proposed studies on the implications of peaceful space activities for human affairs. And basically, they concluded the top two things that they could not disclose to the public and destabilize sort of the public's perception of the world and maybe cause duress to the economy was nuclear powered spacecraft and face-to-face meetings with extraterrestrials. This was NASA and the Brookings Institute published this right at the turn of the century in 1961, and NASA only really was getting founded in 1959. So right from the inception of this massive space program, they were saying, okay, guys, we've done our due diligence. These are two things we can't mess around with in the public forum, and we don't want people to know about this. So whatever happens out there, we got to classify it. And it becomes the groundwork. It becomes the foundation for creating deeply classified programs in the military and probably space.
Yeah,
Yep. It's against NASA's charter to deal with classified programs.
Right.
They're a
So all the
public
real
agency.
stuff went to the NRO, and
Yeah.
then we got never a straight answer.
I hate right after the Tucker Carlson came out, and then that government official came out and said they're craft not of this earth flying in our airspace. I emailed a friend of mine who works for NSA, and I said, "Hey, you believe in UFOs?" And she responded back to me almost instantly. Why did you see one? And I texted her back and said, "No, I'd love to see one. Why?" I said, I can't go on it on this platform on electronic transmission of information, but they're here. And that by itself is just one hell of a statement. Yeah, I asked one of the flight test directors that spent 10 years of his 30 plus years at Skunk Works at Area 51. And he was either on the Tiger team or he was in charge of flight tests. And I asked him, I say, "Hey, Foxy," I said, "do you believe in UFOs?" And he said, "Absolutely, positively, they're real and they're here."
Wow.
And he's the third person from the Skunk Works, not counting Ben Rich, who said almost the exact same thing. Why would he say that if it wasn't that it wasn't for the fact he had some direct knowledge of that happening, and those are that they're here.
No, those will be the guys that would definitely know for sure.
Yeah,
So,
and those are the people I've been trying to track down and talk to for 50 years, and unfortunately, most of them are now dead of old age. I mean, not necessarily reasons for to suspect anything, but no, they just passed away from old age. I mean, I have so many people that I know that have already left this planet, and they're all younger than me. I'm blessed with good genes, I guess. But I have
lucky if I live that to be your age. So
yeah, there. Back in the 1950s, there was a report that there was a RB-36. It's a 260-foot wingspan, 10-engine monster of an airplane, and it was a reconnaissance version. And they were flying in formation with flying saucers, and they were taking photographs through their blisters using a 8x10 Graflex camera. You think the resolution on that thing isn't, and they were right up next to the aircraft, so you could probably count the rivets or scratches or even fingerprints on the craft. And it's that stuff that they won't release. People I know that have been in that, they won't talk about what they do, other than the fact that the crap that they released on this disclosure here last June was one, it was the bottom of the barrel of crappy stuff. There's enough of it there to convince you a little bit, but they say they have some, extremely high resolution images and live, video and 35 millimeter motion picture, medium and large format camera photos taken in the air in close formation with craft. That's what we need to see. That's what needs to be released. And at one time, now this goes back to the 70s, John Andrews, who was one of my dearest friends. I lost him to cancer, but he was a very good friend to Linda Moten Howe. And apparently she had been under contract to do a disclosure video, and they gave her all this stuff. And she was just starting it, and they came in, paid her the amount that they had contracted, but took all her test shots and everything that she had been working on. They gathered it all up and took it. And I don't know if she had to sign some type of piece of paper saying that she wouldn't disclose what she saw before they took the information. That I don't know. That's just my speculation. But there's photography out there, and there's motion pictures. There's high definition video of craft and probably its occupants.
Yeah, I bet you there's way more stuff there. I mean, they have to have more stuff. I can't wait for it all to come out if it does. But on the topic of old friends, how's John Lear doing? Have you talked to him?
I saw him in August. August? Yeah, I saw him in August. He looks like shit, but he's still John Lear.
Still kicking.
They sold the house. His wife of 50 years, they parted ways. And I've known John since 73, so I've known him almost 50 years. And
God, her Facebook page read like a Jerry Springer episode.
oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and
wild.
I was there with a couple of friends of mine, Dale from Kingman, Arizona, and another guy named Michael that lives here in Tucson. And I'd taken them out to the back road to Area 51 from the Tippecanoe Valley side. I took them to the northern fence line, and then I took them to Tonopah Test Range. And we had dinner. We had actually spent 3 nights at the Little Ailey Inn, and it's cheaper to stay at Bellagio than it is Ailey Inn, but they're the only game in town, so you don't have a lot of choice.
True.
Yeah, but
I would just throw a tent in the desert.
Yeah, but I'm taking a group on this UFO function that Dave Scott's putting together. And it's nothing formal. We're going to be at
April.
April 22nd, 23rd, 24th at the Gold Nugget. And then I'm going to Sunday afternoon, or Sunday, whatever time, I'm going to take them all up to show them where the back road is. We're going to go down the road that you can see as you come out of Hancock Summit, which is the big dirt road going into the foothills. We'll go up to the campsite, which is before the restricted area, and they'll be able to see the white pickup trucks and the camo dudes out there, eyeballing us. And then I'll take them in every other place that we can get into, and they'll come. I mean, I've driven in there, and within 2 minutes there's a white pickup truck coming. So they have the sensors in the roads and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But you don't have to be at the fence line of Area 51 to get anything that's taken off from Area 51, because they pretty much keep if it's a program aircraft, it's a spooky airplane. When they take off, they don't do anything wild for about 10 or 15 miles. They're checking everything out, making sure there's no red lights come on in the cockpit saying that you've lost this or this not working. So they're fairly it's a fairly level platform, and they fly right out to the west side of Immigrant Valley, which is the valley that Rachel is in.
So where do you think they keep the TR-3Bs?
There's a base that I've been told by multiple people that's in the extreme northeastern corner of Nevada. It's a 90-minute drive from Twin Falls, Idaho. And he said, well, how do I know it's 90 minutes? 2 guys that worked at Area 51 on some program that went operational relocated from Las Vegas to Twin Falls, and they said they got about a 90-minute commute in the morning by car.
And apparently it's new?
Yes. And you look at Google Earth, that whole part of the upper corner of Nevada is just pixelated. It's various shades of green, dots or squares, whatever.
I'll have to go on the Russian satellite.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I have because that part of the world is so far removed from me, even though I live in the desert. I hope to be able to get to Jackpot. And I want to talk to some of the locals, because if they're building a runway, if they're building a complex, there's going to be trucks going in and out.
There's going to be contractors in town. There's going to be contractors staying at the hotels.
Bechtel.
Yes.
Robinson. Whole bunch of corporations.
If they don't have hotels, they're going to need like they did in Los Alamos, just a bunch of campers with ACs out in the desert somewhere.
Well, that's what it was. Yeah, Area 51 when they first went out there, they were all travel trailers. You know, they had about 50. They had about 50 of them.
Wouldn't you think though that like since a lot of this building happened back in the day, when people were less aware and there was less technology connecting everybody, that if they were going to try and hide some of this technology, it would still be used in some of these facilities that are off the record but quite old. Because like if you're going to go build this new facility in the northeast corner, like you said, there's going to be lots of evidence of this happening. And it's just harder to keep a secret these days, just given the way that we're able to be aware of everything.
There's something going on in town. Someone takes a selfie and so it's on social media, and now it's like, Chinese intelligence.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, what they building there?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm gonna have to.
I gotta roll out too.
Yeah, it's getting late, man. Hey, we're on here with Darcy Weir and Jim Goodall. Guys, go check out Secret Space UFOs: Rise of the TR-3B. We'll have to get you guys back on another time and have another party here.
Anytime. You have my contact information.
Jim, we got to get you and Bob on and tell Bob to come on about the APEC conference.
I've asked him if he'd be willing to come on any type of platform, and he said no.
Yeah, I understand.
He was offered $10,000.
I don't have that
10
kind of
minutes
money.
For 10 minutes on an interview, and he said no, thank you. So that sort of puts him. He's not a joke. He's the real deal, and I honestly believe that.
Well, I mean, APEC will be the place for the real deal to come and share the real deal, because we have a team of physicists and engineers who are hard at work on this problem and would love to talk to anybody who worked firsthand on these kinds of programs. So, heck yeah. Jim, thank you so much for bearing with us and
my pleasure.
And you, Darcy. Have a great night, and thanks to everyone in the live chat as well. And remember, build bridges. Don't hide under them.
Don't burn them. Come on, chill. Thanks, Jer. Have a good one, man.
All right, thank you, guys.
It was a great.
Bye, Jim.
Thank you.
Good night, man.
Talk to you later.
See you.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was definitely a good one.